It was like a light bulb went off when she walked in, and all eyes were on her. In Pretty Woman, an American gigolo, Richard Gere starred in movies that captivated millions of people. But at age 74, he didn't talk about a part, a movie, or an accomplishment. He only talked about a woman, a simple truth that stopped everything for a second. I didn't split up with them because they were wrong. I'm no longer married because I wasn't strong enough to stay together. It wasn't about finding the right person. It was about becoming the right person at the right time for that person. This man had been married 3 times and was once called the most beautiful gentleman in Hollywood. He used to love the most beautiful women in the world, married one of the best supermodels in the world, and was the media and movie stars' favorite. But he didn't find a relationship he didn't have to hold on to until he was almost 70. He found love that didn't demand performance and a woman who didn't come to change him but to stay. And Richard Gere said, "She is the true love of his life. She is the true love of his life." This isn't just the love story of a movie star. It's the story of a man from fame to solitude, from fear to peace, from control to understanding, a journey to learn how to love. Not by instinct, but by growth. Before he was a movie star, Richard Gere was a skinny young man from Pennsylvania who played the trumpet, wrote music for school plays, and studied philosophy at the University of Massachusetts. But he left everything behind to go into theater, where he could be someone else and live a different life. And Richard Gere may have become used to playing the charming man early on, both on screen and in real life. He was always getting women, with his sexy good looks and mysterious, quiet personality. In the same way that he always seemed to escape definition, Richard's early relationships came and went quickly. They were intense enough to be addicting, but never long enough to hold on. To hold on. From Carol Mallory, the fiery model who once called him a jewel shooting across the sky, to Dawn Steele, an editor at Penthouse, who would later become the first female head of a major U.S. film studio, to Penelope Milford, his Days of Heaven co-star, who stayed with him through the 1970s, NODs. 70s, to Richard's short but deeply moving relationship with Sylvia, the woman who took him to Nepal, showed him Tibetan lamas, and introduced him to Buddhism and meditation. They were both beautiful, smart, and brave. But for Richard Gere at the time, love was just a short part of his journey to find himself. He had just finished looking for Mr. Goodbar, Days of Heaven, and American Gigolo, but he was also falling into a place where no one had ever taught him how to keep a woman. How to keep a woman. The whispers at parties, the paparazzi flashbulbs, and the lonely nights in hotel rooms after shooting all seemed to blend together, painting a picture of Richard Gere, who looked great on the outside but was empty on the inside. That might be why he never really wanted to settle down. The women kept coming and going because he didn't know what he needed yet, not deep enough to keep or safe enough to trust. All he knew was that he was living fast and wasn't ready to stop. In 1988, Richard Gere, who was 39 years old at the time, met Cindy Crawford, who was 22, and had just been on the covers of the world's best fashion magazines. They came from very different backgrounds. One person called him the sexiest man alive, and another said she was the next big thing in the fashion world. They fell in love quickly, deeply, and out of the blue. Soon after, they moved in together in New York, and everyone was amazed. Richard Gere was known as the cool and classy gentleman, and Cindy Crawford was known as the most beautiful woman in the world. They were on red carpets, in ads, and on magazine covers, and they became the iconic couple of the 1990s. But behind the scenes, they were two people who moved at very different speeds. Cindy was still figuring out who she was. A young woman who had grown up too quickly in a glamorous world, and still didn't know the difference between her real self and her public image. She was running from photo shoot to promotion, trying to keep her figure and please those who wanted to make her a living brand. At the same time, Richard was getting tired of the crowds after 20 years as Hollywood's dream man. His search for peace led him to meditate, do volunteer work, and hide away in quiet places away from cameras. They got married in Las Vegas in 1991 in a very private ceremony with silver foil rings. There were no guests or media, just the two of them trying to hold on to something beautiful that was starting to fade. But marriage doesn't fix being apart. When Richard meditated, Cindy got on planes. When he sat still and listened, she kept moving, trying to become the woman he needed. become the woman. She once said, I tried to become the woman he needed, and then I lost myself. There was no scandal or betrayal. There was just growing silence and two people living like roommates, with their schedules and emotions not matching up. They got a divorce in 1995 without any fights or bad words. The media didn't know what to write, so they just left a question mark. Why did the perfect couple break up almost 30 years later? Richard finally said it. I loved a woman who didn't yet know who she was. And I thought love could help her find stability. But that was too much to expect. Neither of them was wrong. They just didn't meet at the right point in their lives. One was still flying, and the other had already landed. After his divorce from Cindy Crawford, Richard Gere stopped having loud relationships and stopped being on magazine covers with young supermodels. Instead, he went into seclusion, meditated, traveled across Asia, studied Tibetan Buddhism, and took on deeper, slower film roles. He then met Gere, an actress who was once known as a Bond girl in License to Kill. She was a beautiful, experienced, calm woman who didn't like the spotlight or the chaos. They started dating in 1995. Lived quietly together, and their son, Homer James Jigmore, was born in 2000. At age 51, Richard became a father for the first time. In 2002, they got married in a small ceremony. There were no paparazzi, red carpets, or media attention. Just a small family deciding to live in Pound Ridge, New York, away from the spotlight, where Gere spent most of her time being a mother. Richard continued to do his humanitarian work, grow vegetables, read books, and make some films. But sometimes stability is just an illusion created by parallel patience. Under that calm exterior, two people were slowly drifting out of each other's orbit. Richard was very shy, and would spend hours meditating on retreats in Tibet or Nepal, fascinated by ideas of detachment and stillness. To feel alive, Gere still needed to connect with people, move around, and be around other people. As time went on, they were seen together, less and less. At ceremonies and film events, one would go and the other would miss because their schedules no longer worked together. No one said it out loud, but silence started to speak. After 11 years of marriage and 18 years together, Gere officially filed for divorce in 2013. The reason she gave was irreconcilable differences. But people close to the couple said that Gere felt cut off from her husband's world and that she didn't have the key to the house's spirit. Richard, on the other hand, still thought that silence was a sign of peace. He didn't realize that silence isn't peace when it lasts too long. It's a signal, and I didn't hear it. The divorce took 3 years, not because of emotional problems, but because of money problems. Assets worth more than $45 million in real estate, in several places, led to multiple court cases. Alejandra, at first said no, because they were 33 years apart in age, and she knew he was a famous person around the world. She didn't want to be Richard Gere's next wife, but he didn't give up. Instead, he waited. He was just there, quiet and patient enough for her to see that this wasn't just another relationship. It was a home. They got married in April 2018, in a small Buddhist ceremony in New York. Alejandra became a Buddhist before the ceremony. Not because G asked her to, but because she loved the same things he did. I didn't ignore the age difference, she said. But when the karmic energy between two people is strong enough, differences become secondary. Later she said, Ola meeting Richard Gere felt like someone reaching out, pulling me out of the dark and showing me the way. I got lost. They moved into a quiet house in Pound Ridge after the wedding. This is where Gere had lived with Gere. This time though, he didn't build walls. Instead, they left the doors open and lived together like friends, with no rules, expectations, or roles to play. Andra often posted pictures of family walks, meditation sessions, or their two kids reaching out to catch the fall sun. She's the funniest, smartest, most sensitive, bravest woman who knows what she wants. Richard Gere once said about his wife, I don't need her to be someone else, and I don't owe her anything. We live close without needing to explain. Alejandra calls him the kindest man I've ever met. He's not just a thoughtful partner, writing music for her each morning, still sending flowers even after marriage, but also a peaceful father, holding his children as they fall asleep, always putting family first. People often ask, how do you keep the love alive? The answer is that neither Richard Gere nor Alejandra hold on. They walk next to each other without controlling each other, and touch each other with understanding, not expectation. They value their differences and don't try to become the same. One is very shy and likes to be alone and meditate. Alone and meditate. On the outside, one fights for human rights and the homeless. They met not because they were alike, but because they had the same deep rhythm in their hearts. This is not the passion of youth, it's the love of two people who have been hurt by love before, but have never lost the ability to love again and to love again. They finally understood that love isn't about holding on to someone, it's about never making them feel like they have to try to stay. Richard once said of his wife, "She is the most generous woman I've ever known with others, and with me." That was it. Just that one sentence told him why. He didn't need to look any further. Some relationships are based on passion, while others are based on commitment. And then there are relationships like the one between Richard Gere and Alejandra Silva, where neither person needs the other to feel complete. How full complete? Neither of them came in looking for someone to fix them, make them whole, or turn them into the perfect person they had imagined. She didn't want Richard to be romantic like in the movies, and he didn't want her to look like any other woman he had met. When they met, they had nothing left to prove and no one left to hold on to. Simply writing short songs every morning was all Richard had to do. Alejandra kept dinners quiet with handwritten letters, and the laughter of their children drowned out the noise of everyday life. As the saying goes, if you want to keep someone, don't make them feel like they have to work so hard to stay. It may have taken Richard Gere a long time to realize that, while Alejandra learned the hard way that love doesn't make you lose who you are after years of painful tendon tears from a divorce. The right kind of love lets you be your true self. They don't try to control each other and don't need to keep track of schedules. They don't have to explain their feelings. They just show up. They are present and they live together with full understanding, like two people who have been through a lot of pain and now have found a place quiet enough to let something grow. Richard Gere used to be a face that lit up every screen. He no longer lives in a house with reporters waiting at the gate. At 74, he doesn't regularly appear in the press, walk the red carpet, or answer the same old interview questions. No one knows what movie he's working on, because he might not be working on one. If he is, it's probably a quiet independent project that doesn't need the box office or the Oscars. He no longer works with lenses and now lives with Alejandra and their two young sons in a farmhouse in Pound Ridge, where the grass grows past the knees and the hills are covered in fog. In the morning, this is a day in his life. Making tea or coffee for his wife instead of calling an assistant. Walking the dog along the stone path behind the house. He spends his days gardening, reading Buddhist texts, playing the piano for his kids in the evenings, and sometimes driving them to school in an old SUV. He doesn't have any bodyguards, and there are no more scenes to shoot. He still stays in touch with humanitarian groups, especially those that work on Tibet, human rights, and homelessness. But now he does everything in silence. There are no speeches, live streams, or awards. His wife, Alejandra, still runs the Ray Foundation in Spain. They don't do charity to be praised, they do it because it's the right thing to do. And with their family, everything is kept private. A picture of a walk through the woods in the fall. A Christmas picture, with the words, "From our home to yours, wishing you peace. Wishing you peace." Gere once said, "I don't need to be in Hollywood to know I still exist." That may be why he never officially retired. He just chose to step back quietly and completely. No more acting, no more roles, just living in the nicest way possible. Richard Gere used to be known for playing charming and magnetic men, but now he only has one role, and it may be the most important one of his life. Being a father, a husband, and a peaceful man. Which of Richard Gere's love stories sticks out to you the most? Was it his beautiful marriage to Cindy Crawford, his long silence with Carrie Lell, or his quiet but beautiful life with Alejandra Silva? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you think love always comes late, comment, "Yes, I think so," to let us know that you believe in Richard Gere's love story too. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next stories about your favorite stars' life journeys.